In our series, The World After Coronavirus, today we have with us Claudia Juech. Claudia is the CEO of Cloudera Foundation, and today we want to talk to her about what data governance might mean in a post-COVID world.
We are generating more data than ever through social media, cell phone use, sensors, and so on and so forth. But I think it's interesting that in this crisis, we are still really viscerally feeling the lack of the right data in terms of quality and quantity, and we are not having the right data to guide decision-making and trigger action in many places. So when I think about looking forward and I think about data availability, I think we will see more of what we are already starting to see in pockets today, which is the use of what we call unconventional data or uncommon data sources. So that could be, for example, the use of proprietary corporate data like call data records or satellite data. But I think the bigger effect probably lies in making proprietary corporate data available and in these kind of societal emergency situations. But that raises a number of questions. So who's basically triggering the release of that proprietary data? When does that happen? Who's initiating that? And are companies being compensated? But it also raises privacy concerns. Data questions are tied to the bigger context, which is that some governments are using these opportunities to move to a more authoritarian rule.
Any thoughts from you on how these questions may differ across different parts of the world?
I imagine that in a post-COVID environment, some of the things that we are already seeing in terms of how different cultures in different countries are dealing with the use of data will continue and will maybe even just be more pronounced. So, for example, there has been a huge debate in German parliament whether call data records should be made available to track the spread of the disease. And it was decided for now there is not a necessity to do that. I think that is very different from how some other countries are using that. So the expectation of privacy definitely differs.
We were already very data dependent. Data is now the currency of self-isolation. What do you think might change in individuals' relationship to data?
I think I see one group of people who now go to the Johns Hopkins website every day, for example, and are tracking the caseloads in their county or in their neighborhood and are following the data very closely. I think the other string that we are also seeing is the misinformation that's happening on social media and the mistrust in data that's provided officially or through other channels. Both will, I think, continue and conflict with each other. I think for us, the big question is really, how can we better counteract misinformation that's out there?
What do you think are some of the big challenges on the horizon as far as data governance is concerned?
The question of who's really involved in not only collecting the data, but defining the problem and then making sense of the data that's being found. And I think that the challenge of the digital divide and what is the kind of collective sense-making of the data, particularly involving poor, vulnerable population. From a more futurist perspective, the next challenge will look very different. How can we future-proof data policies and data strategies, not only because the next threat will look very differently, but also because technology advances, our analytical capacity evolves, but it also means there are changes in context. I mean, we talked about the government today might be benevolent, but a country might next year move to an authoritarian rule. And what does that mean? And do we as citizens still feel maybe as comfortable as we feel today in having made our data available